Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week, we like to bring you stories that we think are inspiring in some fashion. As with all Rotary clubs, our focus is on service above self. That's our motto. But our particular club has a particular interest, and the trio of interests that we have are education, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And we have a program today that speaks to these in wonderful ways, and are I think going to get a lot of people kind of in the right heart mode to be like, how can I help my local school? All right, so that's going to be where we are. Our speaker today is George Khalaf, and he is talking to us from New York. He is the executive director of Empatico, and I will pass it over to him to get things going. George, welcome.
Thank you, Rushton. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be connected to the Rotary Club. I have fond memories. My grandfather was a Rotary Club member in Beirut, Lebanon. And I remember, I sort of have fond memories. I recognize the logo, and it's great to be reconnected with this circle. So thank you for having me here. And I look forward to sharing a little more information about Empatico. Okay. I thought I'd tell a little story to understand my passion for Empatico and the vision about where I grew up. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon, a couple months before the start of a 17-year civil war. And Beirut was a city that was divided with the predominantly Christian East Beirut and the predominantly Muslim West Beirut. And in between these two neighborhoods was the central business district. And this is where different communities could come together. This is where Sunnis and Shiites and Maronites and Druze could find common ground, and where they could transcend their sectarian differences and form an elusive, overarching Lebanese identity. This is a picture of the central business district taken in 1985, approximately 10 years into the war. It was commonly referred to as the Green Line because actually an aerial view of Beirut, there was so much destruction in the central business district that shrubs emerged from that destruction. And you could actually see a green line that divided East and West Beirut. Unfortunately, the central business district was the front line of the fighting. So people lost that common ground where they could come together and be more Lebanese. In a way, I mean, I remember growing up and, I grew up in a Christian family. Religion was never that important to me or my family, but during the worst time of the fighting, suddenly it became more important to be Christian. In a way, that religious sectarian identity is what helped us survive, because it's a natural human tendency to retreat to your communal identities during times of hardship. So in a way, what enabled survival during times of war, this turning inward for comfort and protection and support to your family and to your identity, is precisely what disabled post-war harmony and reconstruction. Because you're asking people to let go of allegiances that were so important to them during some of the worst time of the fighting. Now, I'm not suggesting that the world we live in today is similar to, 1970s or 80s Beirut, Lebanon, but social media is doing more to divide us than unite us, arguably. By creating these echo chambers where we surround ourselves with similar voices, similar opinions, we're being fed information, whether it's through Facebook or Twitter or whatever the algorithm is, that feeds into our specific values, our identity, our culture, our political beliefs. And when we do that, the opportunities to gain exposure to people who are different, the opportunities to practice civil discourse across lines of difference are few and far between, because we increasingly surround ourselves with like-minded opinions and people who share like-minded values. A world that becomes more polarized, in a sense, becomes a fertile breeding ground for misunderstanding, ignorance, and even hatred. And in a way, what these filter bubbles and echo chambers are doing isn't that dissimilar to the division between East and West Beirut, where we lose that common space where we can come together and that exposure to people who are different. Now, kids children present a unique opportunity to reverse this trend. And specifically, when we started this work, we talked to some neuroscientists who were pointing to this unique opportunity with kids between the ages of 7 and 11, where at that age, they're old enough where they're starting to ask questions about who they are and where they fit into the world, but they're still young enough where they're beautifully open to influence because they haven't yet formed those default stereotypical assumptions about people who are different. The other unique characteristic about this age is it's an age at which kids are starting to form circles about what the other means. So let's say me as an adult, I might have a stereotype of, someone like Rushton who has glasses, a white person with glasses with black trims. And I meet Rushton and he challenges that preconceived notion. And I meet other people who are white with black trim glasses and they challenge that notion. If I meet enough people as an adult who challenge that notion, I start to redraw that circle of white people with glasses that have black trim. As a kid between the ages of 7 and 11, we're in the process of forming those circles of what it means to be the other. So that sort of exposure to the other, whatever the other is, not only influences the way they form that individual circle of that category, but it almost allows you the possibility to redraw the way they understand the other, the universal other. So it's pretty powerful to be able to have that exposure and take kids out of the world they know at this particular time between the ages of 7 and 11. So what are we doing at Empatico? I want you to imagine for a second if we could combine the best of technology with the best of humanity and take kids out of the four walls of their classroom and expose them to people that they otherwise would never meet at a time in their lives where we know that it makes a difference. Imagine if we could equip teachers with this virtual exchange, these virtual field trips at their fingertips, taking kids out of the community they know, recreating that universal moment that we've all felt when you realize that the world is bigger than the world you know. I don't know if any of you have participated in pen pals, but you can think of this as a modern day version of pen pals, where you're creating that sort of study abroad program, but you're doing it at scale from classroom to classroom. How it works, when we talk to teachers interested in this work, they said that they would go to Twitter to find like-minded teachers. Then they would, go on email to figure out what it is they can do together. And then they would figure out a video platform, whether it's Google Hangout or Skype, where they can do this. At Empatico, we're combining these three features into one non-downloadable, easy-to-use, seamless platform. We have a matching algorithm that matches classrooms based on a set number of criteria that we have. The classrooms need to select similar activities and they need to have similar availability. Next, we have activities around universal topics. So imagine things like water and places you play and weather and festivals in your community. These are activities that every child, regardless of their race, religion, national origin, experiences in their life. And then we have a video chat feature. So I want to focus for a second on the activities. The activities are the red beating heart of Empatico. And we've designed them with over 100 plus educators who they're designed in a way to maximize the likelihood of a meaningful moment emerging. There's a preparation stage that's done in the individual classroom. Then there's an interaction stage where you have the live synchronous feed, much like we're doing here. And then you have a reflection stage where you typically ask a student to reflect on how their perception has shifted as a result of that exposure that they just had. Each of those stages is about 30 minutes of classroom time. So we're asking teachers to spend an hour and a half of total classroom time as a way to enhance what they're already teaching, as opposed to a heavy curriculum that's countless hours or weeks. And the idea is that by having these bite-sized opportunities that easily complement an existing curriculum, teachers and students will come back and do more and more and more. And it becomes a regular tool in their classroom experience. We launched our minimum viable product a little over a year ago. And as of March 27th, I just updated these figures for our call. We have about a little over 11,000 registered teachers in 131 countries. We're reaching about 22,000 students. And luckily, our product is sticky. So we see that 40% of teachers who complete an Empatico activity come back and do more within the first 6 weeks. So they love it. They want to do it again. It's something that stands out from the typical day. Now, reach is one thing, but what's the impact we're having? We conducted a pilot evaluation with about 300 students who participated in at least 2 Empatico activities, and they scored higher on measures of empathy, perspective taking, and critical thinking. And we found that those results were more pronounced in rural classrooms where kids didn't have that much exposure to people who were different. And we need to caveat that pilot study by saying that we can't make generalizations yet, but it gave us the opportunity to know that we're on the right track, and we're in the process of conducting a more robust randomized control trial with PhD students in Stanford University, and we expect those results sometime in June. And that's going to include a sample size of about 7,000 students who have participated in Empatico. And they're really excited about this, the PhD students at Stanford, because they're saying that what's unique about Empatico is the students aren't selecting to be part of this. It's the teacher that's selecting. So it really is a random sample of students that are participating. When I was first pitched this idea, when we started to think about this idea of Empatico, what excited me most was, yes, Empatico itself and the opportunity to connect students across lines of difference was amazing, and having that content and be able to expand to not just schools, but imagine doing this in summer camps or after school programs. I mean, the model works anywhere where there's an adult facilitator and a group of kids. But I just imagined, envisioning Empatico as a catalyst to a much larger global movement. I mean, imagine if we could activate networks of global leaders who recognize that teaching needs to be about more than teaching math, science, reading, and writing, but there's something about universal values and celebrating those universal values. Imagine if we can shine a spotlight on Empatico's successes with collaborations between students in India or Pakistan, Israel and Palestine, Greek Cyprus, Turkish Cyprus, red states and blue states. And then and only then can we start to think about catalyzing, a global movement that really is about these universal values and celebrating kids across lines of difference. And I just thought I'd end with a picture of our team here in New York. We've got a team of engineers, a team of education experts and former teachers, some fundraisers, some operations folks. We're small and mighty, and we're hoping that this is the beginning of something a lot bigger. So I thought, Rishna, I'll pause there, and happy to open this up to any questions, comments, reactions.
Fantastic, George. Thank you so much for the presentation, and I'd like to introduce the people on the call. Let's do this. Let's stop sharing the slides, and we'll get the people up. My name is Rushton Hurley. I am the charter president of our club, and we have 3 other members with us joining George and me. We have in Japan, Nate Gildart, Nate in Nagoya. Here in the Bay Area, we have 2 of our members, Farheen Abbasi, recently a master's student and recipient in Japan, and Cecilia Babker, a recent retiree who is on her way to do the peace.
That's right.
On your way to retiring.
On my way.
On your way. That'll work as well. All right. And so let's start with anybody who's kind of ready to go with a question. I could ask about 20, but I'll hold back in order to be fair on that. Cecilia, get us started.
Yes. So is your organization active in Ethiopia?
Yeah, we do have some classrooms that have registered in Ethiopia, but I need to check whether the teachers who have registered, where they are on the pipeline from registration to completing an activity. There's an entire pipeline where you register and then you get matched and then you complete activities. But I can look into that and get back to Rushton.
Okay, so are they English speaking classes?
Yeah, so right now in terms of translation, our platform, the content on our platform is available in Spanish, French, and English. That doesn't solve for how you handle a synchronous interaction. So that means teachers can complete the preparation stage in their native tongue if it's in English, Spanish, or French, and the reflection stage. But the interaction stage, when we're doing this, we've tested different simultaneous translation technology. And unfortunately, it doesn't work so well because idioms are lost in translation. And when you're in a classroom setting with a lot of background noise, it doesn't work. So what we're doing now is we are creating a Spanish to Spanish matching pool. So when you register, you say, I want to do my match with another Spanish speaking classroom. And based on demand, we'll continue to expand that in the intake process where you can select what language what matching pool you want to be in so that you can have a pool of other classrooms who speak that language when you do the synchronous portion of the activity.
So the reason I'm asking is that I am going to be joining the Peace Corps in June in Ethiopia, where I'm going to be teaching English.
Oh.
And I think something like this would be a wonderful thing for those classes, even though from my understanding, it's high school level. My understanding is that their level of English comprehension and usage is generally not that good, but that's one of those things you work on.
Right.
And of course, there is a 8 or 9 hour time difference between the West Coast and East Africa. And so tell me what you think about that.
We handle the time zone. So when in the intake process with teachers, they select the activities they want to do, and then they select their availability in whatever their local time is. And our matching algorithm runs every hour. And typically within 48 hours, you would receive an SMS text and an email saying you've been matched. So if you're in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, you might get matched with another classroom in Europe or wherever, depending on, it doesn't have to be the United States.
Right, of course. Anyway, that's all very interesting. And of course, I have no idea what the Ethiopian government Ministry of Education does about their curriculum, but there are 50 of us going at the same time. And I'll share the link to you with my other 49.
That would be great. And did you say you're teaching high school there or?
Yes, it's
okay.
High school English.
Okay. Yeah, right now we're available for elementary school between 7 and 11, ages between 7 and 11. We haven't yet expanded to middle school or high school.
Okay, well maybe the high school kids there are at the elementary level.
Right.
Anyway, I'll cede the floor or the screen to the next person.
Nate, you're up.
All right, thank you. George, thanks for that presentation. I'm a teacher. I teach at an international school, and it's what I've been doing for over 20 years now. So this really resonated with me, in particular being at an international school. And I'm one of these geeks that gets on Twitter and Flipgrid and try to connect my classroom with classes around the world. So I really appreciate what you're doing, especially considering my grade 8s are working on apartheid right now, and my grade 9s are doing on the UN. It's really cool. So I've got a million questions, but I'll start with one. And now, Google, Apple, Satori, Flipgrid, you name all these different online companies or organizations that have they might not necessarily want to connect classes like you guys are doing, but there's loads around the world. I'm certain I've seen Empatico before, but I've never really looked at it. So my question is, what are you doing to get the word out there? Like, how are you really, I mean, obviously something like this, but you know, what's your plan to take this to like 1 million teachers to go, wow, this is awesome? Because like just hearing your presentation, when we're finished with the call, I'm checking it out.
Awesome. The great question. I mean, when it's not my kids keeping me up, it's this question that you asked. You know, how do we scale and how do we get to as many classrooms and reach 1 million students? We're pursuing, you know, I would describe it as 3 different strategies. There's the bottom-up approach, which is meeting teachers like you who get excited about this and saying, hey, use it. Or like a friend of mine saying, I know this principal or this teacher, you should talk to them. And that works, but it's impossible to scale that way. On the opposite end of the extreme is a top-down approach where it's talking to ministers of education, trying to get in at district levels. And that is tempting given the scale, but they tend to be very bureaucratic organizations that move super slowly. And oftentimes, you know, you might get an endorsement, but at the end of the day, it's up to the individual teacher. So, you know, I had a contact in the DOE in New York City. They said, great, we love this. Several conversations in the DOE, and then they're like, you need to talk to this district person. I go to them, and then they say, you need to talk to this principal, and you need to talk to this. Then I'm back down at the principal teacher level with an endorsement from the top. The third approach we're using is, I would describe it as middle out, which is what are those partnerships that we can form with networks of schools, like Teach for America, Teach for All, Participate, the National Network of State Teachers of the Year, where we support a cohort of teachers that share feedback with us. We have fellowships where we give them a small stipend, and they share user feedback, and then we have a collective action challenge where they all go out there to their network of teachers, and we spread it through that peer-to-peer. So it's people like yourself who have far more credibility in the education space than someone like me who's telling other teachers to use it. So it's a combination of bottom up, middle out, and top down. And I wish there was a silver bullet where we could just turbocharge that. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of this sort of ground game of finding those partners, finding those superstar teachers who have circles of influence, and depending on them to be our like ambassadors on the ground, spreading the word.
Yeah, you might want to think about looking at these ambassador type programs that a lot of these companies are doing, you know, because it does give a bit of an investment for the teacher on the ground, and you know they might feel like they're a part of something that's going to grow and be kind of big. You know, like Flipgrid just literally exploded in the last couple of years, but it's been around for 6 or 7, right?
Right.
So, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different ways, but yeah.
Nathan, if it's possible, like if we can connect after this call, or somehow if Rusty could put us in touch, I'd love to continue that conversation.
Absolutely, I'd like to have it too.
Things that we always do with these programs, as long as it fits with the speaker's time, is after we finish the recording, those of us who joined it can keep talking because it's so much fun to talk to wildly interesting people. And Nate and I have some ideas on this front. Matter of fact, our students are working on a Flipgrid project together right now. So
okay.
So very cool.
Yes, I had a question. Thank you, George, for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. My question is that I was looking at the map that you had put on your screen, and I noticed that there weren't very many dots in the United States. Does that mean there aren't that many schools participating in the United States? And I also noticed that Japan, there were no dots in Japan. I'm like, oh no, that's not good. Because, you know, I went to school, I did my master's in Japan, and I know that this program is something that I really think would be so impactful for Japanese students. So those are my questions.
Yeah. That was my fault. I should have been clear that map was just illustrative. We have another map that I can share that actually has the dots where classrooms are using Empatico. We have about 50% of our user base in the United States, scattered across all 50 states. And we have a geographic priority to expand in Central and South America, given the Spanish-speaking component that I talked about with the Spanish matching pool, as well as the overlapping time zones with the United States and that user base. So we're very much focused on Central and South America, continuing to expand in the US and really going global. Unfortunately, we're limited because of the synchronous needing to be in the same language. When we do go global in non-English or Spanish-speaking countries, we would have to target English-speaking schools for now.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you.
So, I actually took that slide with the map as pointing to the countries that are participating, and with kind of approximate location with dots. Is that generally accurate?
No, I just that slide was done where we were just putting dots around. Yeah, I should I should have pulled up our dashboard that actually has the dots in places where we're operating.
Not a problem. What we'll do is, as I'll get that slide from you, create a graphic of it, and we'll put it under the recording in the meeting, so people will be able to see it right away.
Great.
One other question about an item in your presentation. You mentioned in the slide that had the 4 stats on it, the fourth one was that 40% of the teachers do a project again with you guys. That to me is tremendous. What is it that you feel is making that number so high? Why are so many people staying with the program?
We've surveyed some of the teachers. So I think there are a couple of things. I think, look, one is we do have an early adopter population that's generally excited about this mission and what we're doing. So they're more likely to continue. But I also think one thing that they say when we interview them is that the Empatico experience just stands out from their regular day, and students are excited about it, and they want to match again, and they want to continue. That first match was just sparking that curiosity. And they want more. And for many teachers, it's that first step is where there's that startup cost of, can I do it? Will it work? How does it work? And once you overcome those startup challenges of like, can I do it? Will it work? How will the technology work? How do I supplement what I'm teaching with it? You overcome those hurdles, then it becomes just a lot easier to do again and again. And I will say that about 80% of those 40% that do it again choose to do it again with the same classroom that they've been matched with. So they're choosing to do it again to deepen existing relationships that were sparked with that first exchange.
Fantastic stuff. Well, we're reaching the end of our time, so let's wind things down. So thank you, George, very much for the presentation. I'm excited about what Empatico is doing. I'm excited to share this with schools that I work with, and hopefully get some more folks involved with what you got going. I want to thank Cecilia and Farheen and Nate for taking part as well, and for all of our members and guests for taking time to come in and join us as we work to share stories that can inspire others. Our goal every week is to have you walk away thinking the same thing that we hope these kids leave the classroom and their schools each day after they've experienced one of these things. They're excited. They're excited about what they've learned. They're excited about what it means for them. They're excited about possibilities for themselves. We hope the same thing is true for every Rotarian who comes to one of our meetings and takes in one of our programs that speaks to the power of technology and what it can be for service. And so I ask all of you who have attended, our members and our guests, to let us know. There's a little form just a little bit down where you put in your name, your email address, if you want an email receipt of having attended. And that way, if you are a guest and you are making up for a miss at your own club, then that email will allow you to take that back to your club secretary in order to cover the miss. We think every Rotarian can be 100% attender, given the flexibility of what we do and what we share. So with that, I'd like to pass the mic back to George for a final word, as we do each week. George, finish us off.
Well, I just wanted to say that I love the work I'm doing and feel just an incredible privilege and honor to have this opportunity, but also that I get so much energy from meeting other people like you and the network that you've set up. And that means a lot to me, and it gives me energy and momentum in the work that we're doing. And it's nice to step away from the day-to-day sort of grind and challenges and be able to share what I believe is an exciting vision, an exciting opportunity. And so I thank you guys for that opportunity and for engaging in this work and for wanting to continue the conversations offline. So thank you.
Very cool. And our entire club says you're welcome, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.